once again. It's always hard to choose the topic when you preach occasionally in different churches. And when you don't know what to do, ask your wife. So I asked my wife, and she advised me to pick up one of the lessons that I taught Ukrainian church a couple of weeks ago. So it may look more like a Bible lesson, and we will read a lot. And also I assume that you read your Bible, especially Old Testament. Well, I love Old Testament, and I read it for 30 years, and it's our roots. Probably you understand that we are, as a branch, we are grafted, is it the right word? Grafted to the root of Jews. And Old Testament is our story, is our roots. And we will look today at the Old Testament very deep. We will look at the story of life of David, but David will be not the main character today. The two people that is around him, we will talk about. I have a hard time to pronounce it even in Russian, so let me try. Mephibosheth, is it right? So sometimes I will try. I will skip and say Mephi, okay? Mephi and Ziba. So first of all, this is very complicated story. If you read it, and maybe you remember. Not everyone even remember this story. It's so complicated because there is no explicit conclusion. But what I like, the Bible sometimes mention different hints. It kind of gives a small crumbs that you can look for conclusion, look for meaning. And this is one of the stories, I guess. So we go to the second slide, and it will be 4 passages today, like 4 acts or 4 scenes. And first scene is the 2 Samuel chapter 9, starting from verse 1. So if you have your Bible or your eye is good enough, you can read from the screen. So before we start reading, we need to understand that David already is on the throne. He's a king. And it's about 15 years passed since he became a king. So he conquered everybody around, and so he's in power. And of course, 15 years passed since first King Saul and his sons, and the first son, Jonathan, has died. So, and probably you also remember that David kind of signed or verbally signed a contract with Nathaniel that David will take care of the family of Nathaniel, and because they were friends and they loved each other. So this is mentioned in the 1 Samuel 20. So if you don't remember, then you may go back and read it. So just think about it. Saul was the first king, and king had a lot of properties, a lot of fields, some slaves. So he was quite rich. After Saul and his sons were killed, who possessed these fields, this property? We will answer this later. So we read, David asked, "Is anyone still left in the house of Saul to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Now there was a servant of Saul's house named Ziba. They summoned him to appear before David, and the king said to him, "Are you Ziba?" "At your service," he replied. The king asked, "Is there no one still alive from the house of Saul to whom I can show God's kindness?" Ziba answered the king, "There is still a son of Jonathan. He is lame on both feet." Well, it seems normal conversation. First hint is the middle of verse 3. David asked, "Is anyone alive from the house of Saul?" And if we read carefully, later on we have another story It's a very strange story, where David gave to the one of the nations 7 descendants of Saul, 2 sons and 5 grandsons, to be killed, to be for the punishment of the house of Saul. So the Ziba didn't mention anybody. Ziba mentioned only this son. And the only thing he tells about this son or this grandson of the Saul is that he's crippled. He's not worthy. He cannot walk, he cannot fight, he's nobody. So it's a hint. Let's remember that. So we go to the next screen. 2 Samuel 9:4. So king asked, "Where is he?" Ziba answered, "He is in the house of Machir, son of Amiel, in Lebar." By the way, this Lebar is no pasture, no green, no fields. So it's a dry land somewhere, not in a bush, somewhere in the wilderness. So King David had him brought from Lebar, from the house of Machir, son of Amiel. When Mephi, son of Jonathan, son of Saul, came to the David, he bowed down to pay him honor. David said, "Mephibosheth, at your service," he replied. "Don't be afraid." The first thing, king tells him, don't be afraid. Why? Well, the usual custom of those days, when another king from another family comes to power, the first thing he does, he kills everyone from the previous king. That it will be no one who would threat his throne. So we may just assume, we just may guess that Mephi, when he was called to the king, he was afraid. He was afraid to be killed, you know. And so the David tells him, well, do not be afraid. And I will surely show kindness for your sake, for the sake of your father Jonathan, and will restore you at all land that belonged to you, to your grandfather Saul. Let's pause here. And will restore all land that belonged to your grandfather Saul. So it means, where's the land? Where is the land of the grandfather? Well, Mephi do not possess it. Somebody else take care of it. So Mephi is somewhere in the wilderness in another family. So he's nobody. So and David promised him that I will bless you. I will return all the belongings from your grandfather to you, and you will always eat at my table. This is very important, you know. What it means that he will live next to the king. You know, that means he will move to the Jerusalem, and he will come to his presence like in the morning, in the afternoon, and the evening, and will have access, direct access to the king. He will always see the king, and he will be at his presence. Later on, we will see another hint that it's a sort of adoption. So king takes this Mephi, this guy, and adopts him into his family, and he considers him as his son. Later we read in verse 8, Mephibosheth bowed down and said, "What is your servant? What you should know, that you should notice a dead dog like me?" Here we see the heart of the Mephibosheth. You know, one of the possible answer would be, or reaction would be, finally, king, you give me what was mine, like he would deserve it, it's my right, finally justice. But he said, no, who am I? I'm just a dead dog. I'm a nobody. And we just may guess what was in the mind or in the life of Mephi. Earlier it was said that the servant lady who took care of this young kid, when he was 3 years old, she ran and dropped him. And that's how he became crippled on both legs. So can you imagine to live the life of such person? And second thing, well, he knew that he was from the king's family. He knew that. And he also knew that God gave the kingdom to another person. And he knew how cruel was his death. So my assumption, my guess, that Mephi thought and learned from the past and understood, well, I'm no good, and I'm coming from the bad family, and I have to change. So and we see a very humble person. And God chooses this humble person not for his achievements, and he brings him to the face of the king through the day. So we will remember that too. Okay, so David shows the kindness to the Mephi, and he gives him fields of Saul, and he draws him closer to himself, kind of adopt to his family. We go to the next slide. So now it's a different passage, different act, different scene. Then the king summoned Ziba, Saul's steward, and said to him, I have given your master's grandson everything that belonged to the Saul and his family. And you and your sons and your servants are to farm the land for him and bring the crops that your master's grandson may be provided for. So, now we see who took care of this land. So Ziba, probably as a first servant or biggest servant, inherited or took everything that belonged to the Saul. Saul is dead. Majority of the Saul sons died. So Ziba is taking care of it. And later we read at Mephibosheth's sons of your master will always eat at my table. And then in brackets, now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Why? Why the Bible would mention that Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants? I don't know about you, but my guess is that, well, Ziba establishes himself as a new generation, as a new clan, as a new family, as a new independent person with lots of fields, with lots of sons and lots of servants, and now he's like almost a free person, very rich and noble. So it's like almost a small army, you know? Okay, let's move. Then Ziba said to king, your servant will do whatever my lord the king commands his servant to do. Okay, fine. So Mephibosheth ate at the David's table like one of the king's sons. You see, it's a direct reference that Mephi was considered as one of the king's sons. And in verse 12, also mentioned Mephibosheth had a young son named Micah. Why? Why would be mentioned that this Mephi has a young son? Because in the future he will inherit everything. So there is no chance for Ziba to be a free person, to have his own family. So every son of the Ziba, every servant of Ziba, they all, and Ziba by himself, they all will be servants, first of all, of Mephi, and then this little Micah. So there is no future for them. They will always be the servants. So it's another hint. Let me check whether I mentioned everything. Yes. So here, so we're still in this place. We can see that it's 3 times mentioned that Mephi ate at the king's table. 3 times. So once again, why? Because it was very important. It was very important for the person to be nobody and be a part of the king's family. So can you just imagine yourself that the, I don't know, President of the United States adopts you, and you can come to his table 3 times a day and have a chat? Well, maybe not everybody likes the current President of the United States. Well, somebody else, I don't know, Zelensky or whoever you like. So I think it's very important, and this is very important for the Mephi to be normal, to be just a crippled person, and to become a part of the family of the king. Okay, we go to the next scene, Samuel 16, 2 Samuel 16. So it's another scene. Many years passed. And now the David's son, Absalom, rebelled against David. So you probably know the story, and it's bad. And David has to run from the Jerusalem, and when he runs from it, then this Ziba kind of helps David with the food and with donkeys, so we can read about that. When David had gone a short distance beyond the summit, there was Ziba, the steward of Mephi, waiting to meet him. He had a string of donkeys saddled with a loaded of 200 loaves of bread and 100 cakes of raisins, 100 cakes of figs, and a sink of wine. The king asked Ziba, "Why have you brought this?" Ziba answered, "The donkeys for the king's household to ride on, and the bread and fruit are for the man to eat, and the wine is to refresh those who become exhausted in the wilderness." So Ziba is doing a good thing. Ziba is helping David, supports him while he's fleeing from his rebelled son. So it seems that Ziba is a very good person, and he supports king, and he's a good person. And David responds the next passage, the next slide. The king then asked, "Where's your master? Where's the master's son?" Ziba said to him, "He's staying in Jerusalem because he thinks today the Israelites will restore to me my grandfather's kingdom." What a strange saying. Let me remind myself. David's son, Absalom, makes a revolt. Who would think that Absalom would ask the descendants of the previous king to come and be the king? No! Absalom wanted to be a king by himself. So it's a really strange saying. Let's leave it like that for a while. And then verse 4. Then the king sang to Ziba, all that belonged to the Mephibosheth, now is yours. I humbly bow. Ziba said, may I find favor in your eyes. Oh, thank you, king. This is exactly what I wanted. Thank you. So David makes a quick decision, not even to listen to Mephibosheth. And he gives all the fields, all the properties to Ziba, and Ziba now gladly accepts it. Oh, now I get it. Now I'm a free person, I'm a rich person, now I'm by myself, and I will make a name for myself. Well, that's my interpretation of this. Thank you. Okay, so we go to the next slide. It's another sin. Yeah? So couple weeks has passed, and we see that we know that Absalom killed, and David is going back to the Jerusalem. And that is what David was in exile for, I don't know, maybe 10 days, a couple of weeks, I don't know what it took. And now we have a problem. And what is the problem? Yeah? When David approaches the Jerusalem, the Mephibosheth comes out of the Jerusalem, yeah? and we read it. Mephibosheth's Saul's grandson also went down to meet the king. He had not taken care of his feet or trimmed his mustaches or washed his clothes from the day the king left until the day he returned safely. When he came from the Jerusalem to meet the king asked him, "Why didn't you go with me, Mephibosheth?" He said, "My lord the king, since I, your servant, I'm lame, I said, I will have my donkeys saddled and will ride on it so I can go with the king. But Ziba, my servant, betrayed me. And he has slandered your servant to my lord the king." So now we have a problem. Who's right? One man says one thing, another man says another thing. And I guess you can make an investigation. I can guess David could bring some witnesses and listen for everyone and try to judge everything. But it seems that David is a smart person. What he is doing. But one thing we will note here, I mark it in bold in the beginning, that Mephi has a proof. He stinks. He didn't wash himself. His mustaches and beard is not taken care of. So he has a proof that for last weeks I humbled myself. I suffered. I didn't wash myself. I prayed to God that you, King, would come back and you will be saved. So he has crippled legs, but he has a good heart and good mind. So he has this witness, you can see on him that he's not lying. So we go to the next screen, and he continues. My lord, the king, is like an angel of God. So it seems like that he's saying, well, you see through. You are like an angel from God. You will know, you will judge. I'm at your mercy. So, do whatever you wish. And then he repeats this humble statement. All my grandfather's descendants deserved nothing but death, and majority of them died. And who, my lord the king, from my lord king, but you gave me, your servant, a place among those who eat at your table. So he repeats it once again. I'm a dead person. I'm a dead dog. I'm not worthy, but you brought me closer to your family. You adopted me. You give me place at your table. I can see you, and I want to see you. This is my treasure. This is what I value. So, what right do I have to make any more appeals to the king? The king said, and then I think it's very beautiful. See, why say more? I order you and Ziba to divide the land. Can you see the hint? What Solomon said to the two ladies who dispute the child? Divide him. And then immediately everybody understood. Yeah? So my guess is that where's the wisdom for Solomon comes? From here. So David said, well, okay, let's divide the land. I will not judge. I will not just go deep in your hearts and dig and evaluate and etc. etc. So God knows. So let's divide the land. Okay. So what is the response of the Nephi? Verse 30. Mephibosheth said to the king, let him take everything. Let him take the baby. Yeah. So let him take everything. If he wants that, that's okay. My heart is not after the fields. My heart is after you, King, your presence. And I'm glad that you are safe back. Now is my Lord the King has returned home safely. So once again, it's a lot of guessing. It's a lot of hints. It's a lot of assumptions. But for me, it's clear. It's clear who has the love for the king and who has the love for the fields. So Ziba is glad to get his fields and the property. Mephibosheth is glad to be near the king. So let's go to the next slide and repeat all the lessons and conclusions. First of all, let me remind you that majority of what was said is just speculations, just assumptions and hints, and be careful. So usually you would not build a teaching based on such guesses. But it's like a small root, something that is deep in our history that really feeds our faith and serves as a good foundation. So, second, crippled Mephibosheth has brought to the king, into the king's family, and was given a gift, not for his own merit. This is our story. We were not worthy, and God brought us into his family. And now we sit at God's table and we see God's face. So this is our story. This is the story of Mephibosheth. And I think it's always good to remember, to humble ourselves, that we are not good enough. And nothing really belongs to us. So it's just a good gift from the king, that he gives to us something and he brings us closer to his presence. Third point, David makes a quick, hasty decision at first. So I guess this is a good reminder for all of us not to make a quick decision. Think or listen for both sides. I had some meetings with families who had troubles. And when you have a separate meeting with a wife and with a man, you hear different stories. It's very rare that we tell the story that we are guilty, you know. Oh, I'm so guilty, let me tell this story, how guilty am I? No, we usually say, how good am I? How right am I? And well, if you listen to another story, they have a bit different story. Yeah? So, before taking a decision, listen both. Next point, David makes a wise decision and balances the decision without trying to get into the hearts and without judging the motives. So he just splits and said, okay, let God decide. And one of the things, I think it was not really good for the king, to reverse his decision. He already gave fields to the Ziba. Well, it's not nice for the king, no, I was wrong, I was stupid. No, king's always right. Okay, number 5. Both Ziba and Mephibosheth tried to please David, but presumably for different reasons. Mephibosheth, number 6, is pleased with the presence of the David's face, of the David's table, but Ziba is pleased with the material gifts, with his fields. And at the end, number 7, question to all of us. Do we love God and want to see his face and be at his table, or we want fields from him for earthly pleasures? So we started this worship today reminding ourselves that God is so loved the world that he gave the one and only Son for each of us, that the world could be saved. And it reminds me how good our God is, how great our God is. And I myself personally wait for a day until I see him face to face. I want to be near him. I want to be in his presence, in his glory. And yes, we ask for his help here and our life here. And well, maybe we sometimes ask for the fields, for the rain, for the good health. But this is not important. This is good, but this is not the story. The whole story is that what will be in eternity. And I think we need to draw our eyes to Jesus and just love him. And just pray to him daily. Read his words daily. Just be in his presence. I find myself that sometimes I do my daily chores and I just forget that I'm God's son. I forget that I'm in his presence. I forget that he sees everything. So I think we need to remind ourselves that who we are, and we are adopted into God's family. And do we really value that? Do we really treasure that? More than material gifts, more than fields. So this is it. And I was told that I can dismiss you. So have a good week, and may God bless you. And I challenge yourself. Read the Old Testament. Find these crumbs. Find these hints. So many things that is hidden in the Old Testament that we can build our faith and strengthen our foundation. This is our roots. May God bless you.